Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Elizabeth Chanter. And we're going to be discussing her amazing novel, The House on Becket Lane. That's available for purchase through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and a whole host of other places. Simply type it into a Google search bar, and you're going to be greeted with all of them. Again, that's The House on Becket Lane. And before we go any further and discuss this amazing novel, I want to quickly point out the fact that Elizabeth was brought to our network by one of the best publishing firms in the business. People you already know, I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. So if you're a writer out there who has gone through their process, creating their masterpiece, and now you need help moving the book you just developed, look no further than ARP because this is exactly what their team specializes in. Now you're going to want to head on over to authorreputationpress.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And people, it is an absolute pleasure to have Elizabeth here on the line. Now, her book, The House on Becket Lane, man, let me tell you, it is entertaining to no end. This is going to be a novel that, when I picked it up, and I was doing some research on it in preparation for today's interview, it struck me as being very akin to similar Jane Austen novels. Yeah, so for my Jane Austen fans out there, you're in for a treat, okay? Because this is going to be something that hits close to home. But also in a much more contemporary setting, similar to Downton Abbey or other shows that take place in that mid-1800 time frame. This is a period piece, but it is something original and something unique all its own. I'm telling you, when you head on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and you pick up copies, strap in because you are going to be taken for a ride. This is something that Elizabeth, trust me when I tell you, she is on to something special. It doesn't have all of the language that we've come to expect in today's contemporary setting, right? It doesn't have the vulgarity. It's not involved in all of those things. It is something that is clean, but I tell you, it is filled with mystery. It is filled with deceit, and it's going to keep you at the edge of your seat, all right? And at the end of the day, Elizabeth is the expert. It's her book. She's written it. She's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. But trust me when I tell you, we're only going to scratch the surface here today. And by the time we've concluded, you're going to run and purchase your copies because you're going to realize this is a book you want to add to your shelf. Elizabeth, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, Elizabeth, listen, we are looking forward to this discussion. As I mentioned in my opening, what you've done here is something special, all right? It's something we are thoroughly looking forward to embarking upon. Now, before we jump into this amazing book, start by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background, please.
Well, when I was at school, I always found it quite easy to write.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite good at writing essays, and I never minded writing letters. So back in my 20s, I suppose, I just picked up a pencil and just began writing. And it kind of took off from there. The characters appeared, and I enjoyed writing about them. And I wrote everything down in rough pencil notes and gave them to a friend to read through them first. And it just kind of grew.
There you have it.
The characters sort of developed themselves. And that Cockney boy, Johnny, he was forever poking his way in. I rather enjoyed writing about him. And all the other characters just came too. And it just went on from there. It took me quite a long time to write it, because I would take some breaks. And my poor friend who read the notes was always urging me to write more, so she could know what happened. And she kind of prodded me to keep going.
So, Elizabeth, thank you very much for that. So we know the origin story of this book. Well, I'm curious now, why did you choose the mid-1800s as the setting for your novel?
Well, that's a popular time era for a lot of people. They just love that kind of world. And life was a lot slower, or at least we think it is for what it is now. And then a lot of traveling was done on horseback or in carriages, and that's how it was back then.
Yeah.
And girls and women, they wore much prettier dresses, and the men always looked good wearing those riding boots and the jacket that went with them. It just sort of fell into place.
Well, listen, as we're continuing to transition here, let's jump more into the book and figure out more of the storyline itself. The book is called The House on Becket Lane. Without further ado, Elizabeth,
Yes.
Please give us a brief synopsis of what it entails.
Well, it's about this family, and the mother has these two daughters, and father has died, and she has left to look after them. And somewhere along the line, this rather unpleasant stepfather appears, and, takes off from there.
Mm-hmm.
Lord Dashel Lale is considered one of the most eligible bachelors in London, but few, even Lord Lonsdale himself, know that despite appearances, his family fortune is not as secure as he believes. When a chance encounter with an unknown lady on the streets shakes his seemingly stable world, the young lord has no idea how to react. She collapses at his feet, a frightened child in her arms. He is whisked away before he can even learn her name. She is Caroline, the younger of two daughters, of a family that carries a burden of secrets as well. All they know is that their mother's tongue is silenced, not by pride, but by fear, and she took her secret to the grave. Now Caroline lives in a house with only her stepfather to guide her. Lord Lonsdale exploits his station to learn of her identity and where she lives. His arrival triggers an angry quarrel between Caroline and her stepfather. Horrified to have caused such tension within her family, he departs with a promise to return the next day. But duty calls him away before he can keep his promise. He learns, thanks to the gambling debts of his brother, his family is on the brink of financial ruin. He has no choice but to turn his attention to restoring the family's fortune and honor. Now Caroline has her own secret to share. What she must tell him may end their love before it can begin. Now if people want to know more, they have to read the book.
Smart woman, Elizabeth. I like it. Well, As you've mentioned,
Oh.
the time period that you set it in is something that is, again, whether it has always been this way or is it is just as late, within our society right now, it is wildly popular. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, very similar, at least in the time period, to Jane Austen novels. And we understand how popular her novels have become. So this is by no means anything that is surprising to me. But I'm loving the fact that it is receiving such high acclaim because it deserves every bit. Now, you mentioned how it was very entertaining for you to write. Well, I'm curious to know, what would you say throughout that writing process, what was a highlight for you?
No, it seemed to unfold itself. Now, the time period when Dashel and his brother rode on horseback up to Yorkshire to find out more and try and settle the mystery, that this is when the time era of trains were beginning to come in. Now, they could have gone up by train if the trains had gone that far anyway. I think they might have been bored silly sitting in a railway carriage, which is very different from a horse-drawn carriage. And I put them on horseback, and they had more of an adventurous ride. They met up with people. They stayed at travellers' inns all the way up, down, back again. I think they enjoyed themselves too. And I found it much easier to write with that background. Because the horse-drawn carriage era is still very fascinating. People seem to like it. And it all took place in London, Hertfordshire, and the county of Sussex. That's quite a popular area still. So that's just about it.
You know, Elizabeth, as we close out of this fantastic interview, let's dive into our imaginations a little bit. If you had the opportunity, and let's say you could take your book and you can bring it to life, okay? And you were able to enter the world that you've created. Is there a particular page or section that you would enter and experience? And if so, why?
That's a very difficult question. Because the one criticism people have had about the book is I have not put in enough description. Well, I felt it should be left to the reader to imagine it themselves. I can see what the criticism is. They have to have it written for them instead of using their own mind. Picture the scene themselves.
Well, I love it. Elizabeth, as we close out, listen, we have discussed a lot of information here today. Is there anything that we haven't yet touched up on that you really want to make sure our listening audience is aware of?
One of the questions here is, what does the title of the book mean? And when I started writing, I was trying to think up of a title. And it just came to me that this title sounded quite good. House on Becket Lane. Because that's where a lot of it took place, as well as Lord Dashel's family home. Yeah, I think it went over quite well. And besides, I like to write about horses anyway, think up names for them. I'm quite pleased with my own book.
Well, you know, Elizabeth, we're quite pleased with it as well. And I know our listening audience is looking forward to picking up copies. So one last time, people, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, and it's a whole host of other places. The House on Becket Lane by Elizabeth Chanter is a book that you want to add to your shelf, is a book that you want to get as a gift for someone else to add to theirs. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and do just that. Elizabeth, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Well, thank you very much, Benji, for taking the time to listen. I've enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.